Hi guys, welcome to making it this far in our Python series for beginners. This is going to be the last class for this series where we're going to look at the user input, we're going to look at the try block, and we're going to look at how to use modules in Python. So user input basically works in such a way that it's going to first of all stop the terminal and get the user input from the user, then collect that information and print it back to the console as much as we want to use it for. So let me give you guys an example. In our code here, we're going to be looking at we have a username. Now on line one in here, I'm basically creating a data, I'm creating a variable username, and I'm using the input keyword to ask the user pass in a username. So this is how we're going to generate content from the user and use that content in our code. We're going to use the input keyword and we're going to write what we want to tell the user to do. Enter your username. Then we're going to use that input from the user and print it back to the terminal using the variable that we're storing the input from, which is username here. So on line 2, I'm printing out to the console the username alongside the name the user has given us and a welcome statement afterwards. So let me run it in the console and I'll show you how it looks like shortly. So I run this in the console and I have enter your username like we expected, and I pass in my name, MacDave. And when I run it in the console, I get your username is MacDave, welcome. So this is how we can go about generating input from the user and working with that input from the user and using it to perform some certain operations in our code. The next thing I want us to look at now is how we're going to use modules. Now, what is a module? A module can be seen as a code library that you can use to perform some certain operations. So now I want to show you guys how to create a module of your own. How we're going to do that is that we're going to create a new file in our directory here. We're going to call it, I've already done it already. I called it the new module file. And in my new module file here, I just basically created, let's highlight this one first. Let's comment this one out. So in the new file here, I just basically created a function greetings. And in the function greetings, I'm passing a name and I want to greet the user with that name. So I'm going to add the name to the print statement and I'm going to call it what? New module.py. So this is a module I've created. Now, what is a module again? A module is like a code library that contains a set of instructions. So in that set of instructions, I want to tell the user that when you import this library, perform the certain operation with it. That's the module I'm referring to as the library. So now we'll go back to our code base and we're going to import that very code into our code base. Now, how do we go about it? Let's clear the console, the screen up. So I first of all use the import keyword, imports, then followed by the name of the library I want to import. So the name of the library in my case is new module. That's and now every function that is available in this new module is available to me in this my new code here. Okay, so now how do I go about using that function called greetings? I simply call the module name, which is new module, and I call the name of the function with the dot notation. Dot, you see on my terminal, it pops up already, dot greeting. Then I pass in the name that I want the user to greet me with. I'm going to pass in my name, MacDave. And when I run this to the console, I should be seeing hello MacDave. This is how we use modules in Python. So now I run it in the console and I should be saying hello MacDave. So in my console here, I'm seeing hello MacDave because I've been able to import this module into my new code and I'm able to call that function. Everything that is available in that function is available to me in my module now. So now I can not only use functions, I can use classes and objects and other types of collections as the case may be. Let's go back to the code where I highlighted this code out and use this person object and see how we can use it as a module. So I'm going to uncomment this line out. In this line, I just basically created a person class, a person object, and I have the name, I have the age, and I have the country. So I want to be able to view these details from my main code here. I've already gone to import the name already here. Now let me view the age from there. So I just basically create another variable to store the value I want to get. Then what do I want to get? I'm going to first of all call the my module. That's called new module. I say new module and I want to get in the person object that is in there. So I'll say dot person. It comes up here on my console. Then I pass in with square braces what I want to get, the key value pair of what I want to get. And in this case, I want to get the age. So I'm passing the age. and I should be getting the age. Let me do one more for the name, and I pass the name again. I'm just going to copy and paste that, and I'm going to pass in the name. I want to get the age and the name from the module there. Okay, the name is going to be John and the age is going to be 36. So when I run this again, I should be getting the name and the age in the console. Okay, so I'm just going to print, I'm going to pass them in two different variables. B, I did not print it to the console, and I print A, then print B. Then when I run this to the console, I should be seeing age, name, and also the initial hello MacDave greetings that we had there. And I run this in the console, I'm seeing in the console there the name, hello MacDave, that I passed from the definition of greetings, then age from the new object there, person one, and the name of the person. So this is how you're able to use modules in Python. So modules comes in very handy when you want to separate your logic from your application. Okay, if you have a bunch of logic and you don't want to mix it up in your code to make it more readable, you can pass all your functions into a module and import those models into your actual code for clarity to make your code more readable and more efficient. So that's the concept of modules in Python. Now let's look at the try block concept. The try block concept allows you to test a block of code for errors. Then we also have, after the try block concept, the except block. So after you try a piece of code, what should it expect? What should throw up in the console if the code does not work? That's why we have the except block, which allows us to handle the error that comes when the code does not run successfully. Then the next thing we're going to have also is going to be the else block. So now the else block comes in after the exception block comes in. Then it tells the user else. If the first code does not work, this is going to be the result on the console. Then the last thing we have is the finally block. Now the finally block runs irrespective of if the code works well or not. I'm going to show you guys how this works in our console, starting with the try block. So for the try block, I'm just going to create a simple application that just tells me to print a variable to the console. I'm just going to clear this up. Now, how does the try block work? For the try block to work, we are going to first of all use the try block keyword like this. It's a keyword try. Then we use the column. Then we come back in. Now remember, we need to indent our code. So now what do we want to try? I want to print x. Now this is going to give me an error intentionally because x has not been declared, nor has it passed a variable, a value in our code. So I want to see what will happen when this x is being printed to the console without any declaration or value, as the case may be. Now I have passed in the try. Now this is not going to work. Now what should happen if this does not work? That's why we have the except. The except that comes like this. We're not passing any name error for the first time. Now I'm going to do except. Now print to the console what should be expected if this code does not work. So I'm just going to have a print statement here, and I'm saying an exception occurred. Okay. So now what is happening here is that I am going to first of all pass the try keyword. I want to try this block of code out. Now should this code not work, except is the alternate thing that comes to the console and tells me why this did not work. So I'm not saying an exception occurred. That is the reason I'm giving for this code. So now when I run this in the console, I should be getting an error and I should be seeing the exception that is being passed in my code, which is an exception occurred. I'm running this in my console. You can see that my code did not print x because x has not been declared, nor has it been passed a value. I'm only having the except clause, which is giving me what an exception occurred. So now I want to give you different instances to explain to you what happened. So I want it to be in a situation where, okay, let's say the user passes a value that has not been declared, or the name is not is going to throw an error. I want to handle different types of exception. I can have many exceptions in one try block. So I have one exception here. I want to add another exception. I can come back here and say another exception should come in here and give me a reason why it did not work. I'm passing in another exception here. I'm going to just simply indent this down, and I'm going to come back to my line here and say except again. And I want to pass in the name error this time around and tell the user that there is an error with the name he passed. So I'm going to pass in the name error, which is a keyword. that understands for name error issues in Python. So I'm going to just say the message I want to print to the console is that X is not defined. So the user knows that, okay, it's the value he's passing that is not defined. Variable X is not defined. So now I've been able to pass in two exceptions. Now the first one is to just check for a name error exception. So if it's going to be a name error, this will be what should be generated to the console. So the user will understand that, okay, it's an error from his variable. Or if it's not a name error, sorry, the exception should be an exception occurred. So let's run the console again and see what should be shown to the screen. I'm having the first one because why? It is actually a name error. The variable X is not defined. That is how you can handle different exceptions in Python. You can use the name error. We have a whole bunch of them. This is just to test for if the variable name is not declared or the variable name is throwing a null result. This handles that error. Then the last one there handles if the error, it's not a name error, it's a general error that you cannot catch. It just throws you the second exception error. So now I've been able to use the try and the except. Let's go a step further and add the else block. Now with the else block, we can define a keyword to be executed if no errors was raised. In the event that this code throws no error, I want to pass in a notifier to the console that, okay, this code has worked without any error. That is where the else keyword comes in. I can use the else keyword like this. I go back again and I'm going to use else. Then I will use print. Then I will say no error occurred. Okay, so now how is this going to work? This has to work in such a way that I have no error. So now for me to have no error, I have to come back here and clean the error I was having, and I'm going to pass in hello. That's something basic. Now this except will not flash in the terminal, nor will this except flash in the terminal. What is going to be shown is this else, because now my code is clean and it works fine. So let's give you an example around it in the terminal. I'm seeing hello, no error occurred. So now the else keyword here helps us to pass in a message to the terminal telling the user or the programmer, as the case may be, that your try worked, what you try to work to display or what you try to run worked successfully and there is no error. So now this is how I can test for different conditions in my code and also preserve the response in such a way that it is user friendly and it does not throw up different error messages to the console. We have one more available for the try block, which is the finally. Now, the finally block is specified and it's going to be executed regardless of if the try block raises an error or not. Now, let me show you how the finally works here. I'm going to pass in the finally here, finally with the keyword finally, and I'm going to say works regardless, or let's just use print finally. Now, I'm going to pass in that same error here and show you what happens when I pass in that same error. X. Now, when I run this to the console, the finally will still show regardless of me having an error or not. I'm running this now, and you can see my terminal that I'm getting variable X is not defined because the X is a variable that has no value, nor is it declared. And I'm having also the finally. So the finally is another way to just print a last block of code and also your first block of code if it does not work, and also gives you a notifier also like the else keyword. But the else keyword is different from the finally because for the else it works when your code successfully builds, but for the finally just an additional message that prints to the console to clearly explain what happened or what did not happen, as the case may be. And this is how we can use the try block error to handle errors that might arise from snippets of code from your program. And with that, we have come to the last part of this series for the fundamental of Python basics for beginners. So now the next phase for you now could be venturing into different fields like data analysis, web development, cybersecurity, as the case may be. I will be dropping a couple of links in the description for you to check out other materials that can help you navigate your path better. I will have a roadmap for different career paths using Python. And also, if you have any issues regarding any of the career paths you want to try out and you want a guide on it, you can drop a comment on what language you want me to help you out with, or what framework or what area you need guidance on, and I'll be happy to make a video for that. See you guys in the next tutorials I'm going to make. Cheers.